Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nigel Daly, and on behalf of the Board of the Directors of the British Academy of Film and Television Arts Los Angeles, I'd like to welcome you to this special event. Tonight is the latest in our popular Behind Closed Doors evenings, and we are proud to be welcoming Gary Oldman. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator for the evening, Gavin Scott, and our guest of honour, Gary Oldman.
Well, welcome, Gary. And I think after having seen that collection, everyone will realise what an epic trip we have to make this evening to cover that amazing career.
Yeah, go on then.
Exactly. Let's start off in 1958. You were born in 1958.
Going back that far,
Absolutely. We have to get started somewhere.
Because the tube stopped running again.
If looking at a film that you later wrote and directed, Nil by Mouth, if that relates to the kind of childhood you had in Southeast London, I imagine it was a pretty tough upbringing.
Yes, it was interesting childhood. In the movie you have the girl, the daughter who doesn't talk, and is sort of just really catatonic from the whole experience, just this passing in front of her, and I was the sort of that's me really. If I'm in the film at all as a character, then I would be the little girl that just watched it all going on.
Your father left home when you were 7. Now I gather that you were in terms of the talent you were showing as a child, that it was musical talent rather than acting talent. Is that right?
It was yes, musical, and I had party pieces. You know that we actually. My father was a pipe fitter, engineer, and he used to get contracts abroad. In the then it was the West Indies, and in 67, 66, 67, I lived in Jamaica. For 2 years, and then of course I came back, and my party piece was to speak, patois, sort of, that was the. I used to do impersonations and things as a kid, and then I got into piano and guitar, and it was always. I didn't just want to listen to music. I wanted to make it. I was always one of those kids that it wasn't enough for me to go and see a play. I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to do it.
Did either of your parents encourage you in that?
Well, my mother simply said, if that's what you want to do, then you have my backing. But we had no books in the house. So I sort of consider myself as I just sort of picked it up as I went along, self-taught.
Did you go to the local library? Was that your solace?
Yeah.
You left school at 16?
16.
And what did you leave school to do? Did you just want to get out of school, or did you have a plan in mind at that point?
Well, I went through different things I wanted to be. I wanted to be an astronaut. Then I wanted to be from an astronaut to a postman. And I thought that might be fun to do for a while. I went through these Royal Navy, because my father was in the war, in the Royal Navy. And then a musician, but then I didn't really have the talent for it. I have a facility for it, but not a talent, I don't think. And so that wasn't going to be. Soccer, I was a good football player. Soccer, that was something I seriously considered, and many believed I would do it. Actually, I used to play for the county. I done all sorts of things. When I left school, I did graphic design, and I used to do the typography on the back of album covers. And my very first gig sort of on my own, was to design the sheet music cover for the Drifters in a song that was called Blow Your Whistle. And in those days, we used a thing called, does anyone here know what letraset is?
Oh, yes.
It's going back, isn't it?
And very fiddly it is too.
Yeah, and you would prepare the artboard and anyway, I letrasetted the name, but I'd left the H out of whistle. And they printed 1,000 copies.
So you decided to become an actor.
So I decided to become an actor.
I have read that you were inspired to become an actor by seeing Malcolm McDowell in Raging Moon. Is that right?
Yeah, Brian Forbes' Raging Moon, and it was on TV one night, and I watched it and thought, that's what I want to do.
Oh,
That was it. It was like alcoholics call it a moment of clarity, a spiritual awakening, or whatever you would call it. But there's a story that John Lennon tells, where he says that he went to see Elvis Presley, and that there were all these girls that were lining up around the block, and then he said, and every time he came on the screen, all these girls screamed, and he thought, that's a good job. And I think it was literally, I connected with McDowell. He had a sort of, I guess now he had that sort of, as a young actor, certainly, he had that, it was that menace and the mixture of menace and vulnerability. He had a very interesting quality to him. And I sort of just connected with it and thought, I want to do that, and I want to be in it. I want to be, play characters like this.
And I gather you applied to RADA, but were not admitted. Is that right?
Yeah, I auditioned for RADA. Yeah, because all my heroes had sort of they had started there. I had, if you think of people like Tom Courtenay, Alan Bates. Peter O'Toole. I mean, all of these great actors who'd gone through the Royal Academy. So it was a natural sort of choice that I wanted to sort of launch it, whatever career I thought I had, was to sort of launch it from the academy. But they told me to some awful. One woman was knitting. And sort of looking up over her spectacles, and there was another one with a sort of cigarette. And they said, "Do you have anything to fall back on, love?"
Ooh.
And I said, "Well, what do you mean? We think you should think about something else to do for a living."
Oh dear!
It was one of those sort of.
How did you react? Were you cast down, or were you angry, or what did you?
Slag off.
Yeah, yeah. You certainly didn't give up.
No. And then I auditioned for a few other places. A few other places I didn't get in actually, but anyway I got into Rose Bruford, and they're all in the, at the time. Now looking back, I mean I think they're all much of a muchness, and you take the good from them and reject the bad, and it hasn't seemed to hindered me in any way.
Not too much.
But you were told awful things. They're bullies, and some of the teachers are failed actors, so they can be very, very mean. And you'll only ever play Puck, which a teacher told me that.
Wow.
So I wasn't a star pupil, and I certainly. I was the first person to get an equity card. I was the first person in the year to get a professional job. But that wasn't, I don't think that was talent. That was just kind of hard work. I got my photographs in, I got my letters in, and when everybody was up the pub fucking around, I was doing the work. And that's, pardon my French, but it's that thing where you've got to...
The showing up part of
you've got to,
success.
Yeah. I think you've got to you've got to do the work. I tell you, from the age of 16, really, to 24, Eric Clapton was practicing the guitar.
Right. He wasn't God then, he was just getting ready.
He was just getting ready to be God. He
Yeah.
was warming up. But, I mean, obviously he has a talent. That is, you know, that's a given. But all those riffs, all of that understanding of that instrument, all was in those years when everybody was sort of messing around and getting... He did his drugs later, for sure. But when everybody sort of was messing around, from breakfast to dinner, that's all he did was play the guitar. And I think that you've got to... now people want it too easy.
Now, you went into the theatre straight after college. Was that a good grounding for exactly what you're talking about, this process of learning your craft, as opposed to going straight into movies?
Oh, well, movies were you never imagined that you would be in movies. Movies, that Michael Caine did movies. Sean Connery, you know, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, they were in movies. I trained for the stage. That was your training. There was no television training. There was no... Now they have courses, and you have film acting. There was nothing like that. When I was at drama school, and it is going back a while, you know, it was radio. You trained also for radio, where you had to you had to turn the page away from the microphone. It was lovely to see you, Vicar.
That's worth knowing how to do.
It's worth knowing how to do. I mean, I've had a chance to do it once or twice, but it was very sort of old. It was very old school. It was very French's blocking. That what we call. You remember French's blocking?
Absolutely, yes.
I'm going back a few years.
Did you enjoy the stage? I mean, one thinks of people being in rep and the years of grind and that kind of thing. What was your response to being a stage
I loved
actor?
it. I had a wonderful time, and I worked with some great people, and I worked with some fantastic companies. I mean, I worked at the Glasgow Citizens Theatre, and my first year that I was there, I was at Glasgow with Rupert Everett, Robbie Coltrane, Mark Rylance, Andy Wilde. I mean, we were all in the company together. I mean, it was
Distinguished company.
Yes,
Yeah.
a phenomenal, a phenomenal experience. And I loved the theatre, and what I did early on, what I would try to do was I would do a play, a film, and a play. When I started to make films, I would do a film and a play, a film and a play, and I would do it in that way. Sometimes I did a film and a play at the same time. And now I look at it, and I did Prick Up Your Ears. I would get up at 7 in the morning. I would go to work at 5. I would finish my work on the set, and then I would get a car to go to the Barbican. And I had 5 plays in my head, because I was in rep in 5 plays at the time. So I would do Joe Alton in the day, and then I would go off and do a play in the evening. I mean, I can't even imagine how. You were young. You're full of energy. I was young, yeah, and full of beans. One of the first directors you worked with in film was Mike Leigh. One of the first, yeah. Was that? I mean, did you like his style? Because it's a very obviously distinctive style of directing and filmmaking. Was that a style that appealed to you as a performer? It was just you know, it's 6 months of rehearsal before you even get in front of a camera. Yeah. And there's people that he works in such a way, there's people that you don't meet. There's actors that you don't meet because your character doesn't know them, and you wouldn't meet them. I mean, it is an absolutely unique way of working. I also worked in a similar way with Les Blair on a BBC film. And but he was a sort of, it was a shortcut. It was almost poor man's Mike Leigh. You know, he had adapted some of the techniques, but there's no one who works. There's no one who works like Mike. I mean, he's changed his credit because it used to say devised and directed by Mike Leigh, and now it says written. Right.
And then from Mike Leigh, we go to the Sex Pistols. Well, not directly, but the Sex Pistols came up fairly soon after. Tell me how you went about finding the character of Sid Vicious when you were presented with that.
I mean, it was one of those. Movies had come my way before, Mike, before the Sid and Nancy, and I had always turned them down. Not out of it was just that, I turned down Sid. I mean, 3 times.
Why?
Because the script was crap.
Oh, okay, that's a good reason.
It was just who was interested. I thought in this.
Yeah.
I was not a punk guy. I was James Brown, Motown, that soul, and Bowie. And of course the Beatles. But that's a given, isn't it? The Beatles. So I always wanted to do. I did Prick Up Your not a Prick Up Yours. I did a Joe Alton play in Chesterfield Rep for 2 weeks and turned down Mutiny on the Bounty. Wow. with Tony Hopkins, because I said to the agent, I was foolish and I was young and I just thought, well, look, what am I going to get out of this? I'm going to get a suntan and a flat, possibly, But I'm just going to be one of those guys on the ship when I could go and play entertaining Mr. Sloane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd rather do that. And my agent would want to kill
you.
would want to kill me, darling. But you've never made a film before, And I said, well, maybe when it comes along, the right thing will come along. And in the end, I was bullied into doing Sid and Nancy. Yeah, and it for me now it feels like a curtain raiser. It's a little vaudeville act, front curtain. Before the career started, I cannot watch it.
Really?
I just cannot bear it.
Let me just quote, though, one thing one critic said about what you did. A hugely sympathetic portrait of the punk figurehead as a lost and bewildered man-child. And I mean, it was such an interesting performance of someone who in some ways was a monster, but you got beneath the monster.
Derek Malcolm.
No, it wasn't actually. No, it was somebody else, but it sounds a bit like him. But it must have been interesting to try and find the soul within Sid Vicious.
I watched hours and hours of footage of him. Met various people that had known him. I had a fruitless meeting with Johnny Rotten, who just basically said everybody was a CUNT, and that was it. That's all I could get out of him. What was so and so like? And so that was. But I met his mother, and that was kind of interesting. But it's sort of mists of time now, Sid. It's a bit of a thorn in my side, and I mean, I have a relationship with it that other people don't. So, if I kind of sneer at it a bit, I can understand why it became a cult thing, but it's almost as if I've done nothing since.
Hardly, but
so when people say. They actually I did a Q&A. It was a screening of Tinker Tailor, and a woman came up to me and said, "I like the film. She said, "But I love your socks."
Always flattering.
Yes, thank you very much. I have a thing going with my boyfriend. Are they Paul Smith? Because he says they're not, and I say that they're Paul Smith. And I said, yes, they're Paul Smith socks. And people say the strangest things sometimes, don't they? And did you like the movie? Oh yes, we like the movie.
But the
we
socks
love your
are
socks.
great. I'm assuming that Joe Orton would have been a more interesting character to explore, just because he was considerably more interesting as a person than Sid Vicious.
Yeah.
And yet, you have the interesting challenge with someone like that of finding. I mean, when you are portraying someone who is a creative artist, of actually, that's a hard thing to do, to actually figure out how you convey creativity.
Well,
through your own
Bennett
creativity.
did it for me. Alan Bennett did it for me.
Yeah.
Because of that script.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful, wonderful screenplay. So a lot of the work is there for you. It's done for you. And I met many, and I knew people that had known Joe, and met Peggy Ramsey, bless her soul, and Ken Cranham. Do you know Ken Cranham? Anyone here?
Yes.
And he was Hal in the first Loot, and Joe loved him because Ken was beautiful. He was such a gorgeous looking guy. And Joe loved him, and he was a man as well. He was a heterosexual man, and Joe loved that even. That was even more attractive. He was butch, he was unavailable, and he was beautiful. And Joe loved that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he came up with a wonderful theory. I said to him, "Why do you think he killed him?" Because he bludgeoned him to death with a hammer 11 times. And then took an overdose of pills and killed himself. And he smashed his head to pieces. And they lived in this little flat in North London. And they shared this flat for their entire relationship. And I said to Ken, why do you think he killed him? And he said, because he could hear him breathe. And I thought that was, he was overtaking him. Joe was the talented one. Joe was the one who was getting all the accolades. Joe, the Beatles, he was writing the script for the Beatles. The Beatles wanted to meet him. And slowly Halliwell was receding into the background. And you can imagine you're in this tiny little flat, and at night you resent and envy this person, and they're sleeping comfortably. I thought that was a
very interesting insight. Talking about someone else who killed someone else, thinking about your performance as Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah.
There you were working with a director, Oliver Stone, with a very distinctive style. Was he helpful to you, his method of filmmaking, helpful to you in getting to the heart of that very strange man?
It was. There was very little of Oswald on the page, and Oliver gave me a couple of airline tickets, some contact names, and said, go to Dallas, go to New Orleans, and find out who he was. And so I met a bunch of people.
What sort of people did you meet?
Oh, just people that worked with him and that were in the Cuba, the chapter there in New Orleans, and then
the Free Cuba campaign.
Yeah,
that kind
that's
of thing.
it. And then that would lead to, so you'd meet someone in a bar. You were like an investigator, really, more than an actor. And you'd meet someone in a bar, and then they would talk, and they say, "Oh yeah, but Joey used to know. Joey lived over on the thing, and he, before he got involved with that, he knew Dave Ferry, who, he said, you got to meet so and so." And then I'd get another a number, and then I would, and it was very sort of, this is before cell phones, So I'd be on the corner of, putting my dime in.
Wow.
On the corner, saying, is Joey there? And I would go and meet all these rather interesting people. I met Marina, the wife, and the daughter.
Oh, what did you make of her?
She's bitter.
Yeah. Well, understandably, I suppose.
Yeah, and understandably so. And of course, they then had to move away because the name Oswald was. He was the man. He was the man that, took Camelot down.
Destroyed America. Yeah.
Yeah.
But a really interesting. Because you may disagree with me on this, but I see Lee Oswald as a historical person as a fairly thin thin character, you know what I mean? Not a
Yeah.
person of great depth, and you managed to find what was in him. That must have been quite hard work, even having done the research you're talking about, to actually
I
get
think
to the
you
essence
have-
of that
yeah,
man.
you have to find something that's. I mean, he was. You look. You've got to go along with the theory. But you can't have, you can't work with Oliver Stone and say, listen, between you and me, I think he did it.
Yes.
I mean, that would be
You'd be off the picture.
so you're with Oliver, and I think he was peripherally involved. I do believe so, and I believe he was set up, and that he wasn't the shooter. There's too many
odd things.
There's too many odd things now, whether we'll ever really know the truth of it. But I think Dave Ferry had something to do with it and flew a couple of guys in. My belief is that it's probably French shooters, European, that came in. There was a shot from the grassy knoll. I mean, it blew the back of his head off. So it came from the front. I mean, I don't know what bullet does, shoots from the back and does that. But so we went, I kind of go along with the fact that he was involved in some capacity, but I don't think he was.
He wasn't the mastermind.
No.
That was in 1991. That movie came out in 1991, and you worked with another very distinctive director not long afterwards for the movie Dracula with Francis Ford Coppola. I imagine the experience of working with Francis Ford Coppola would be very different from that with working with Oliver Stone. Perhaps I'm wrong. I mean, he could
they're
be.
both, but they love themselves, don't they? They arrive and say, "I'm here," but in different ways. I mean, arguably he is one of the greatest living American directors, and you look at the films and just you are in awe of the work, and so it was extraordinary to sort of work with him. I screen tested and got the part, and then there was 4 weeks rehearsal at Napa, Camp Coppola we called it, and he was, and we drank a lot of his wine, and he cooked big meals, and he's like the Godfather, he's like the big papa, and complex man, as you can imagine.
Did that atmosphere help from your point of view in creating the role?
I don't know how you get. I mean, I've told the story before, but he would send people off. We did improvisations, and I mean, it was quite 4 weeks. That was intense and a lot of fun. And you never get that on movies. I mean, you would never get that kind of rehearsal. But he would send people off. Carrie Elwes and Keanu Reeves went off, ballooning and sort of, or horse riding and all of this, And
What did he send you off to do?
Well, I said, I'm 300 years old and I'm dead. What do I do?
He sent you to the local crypt, I imagine.
Sent me to the local crypt. They got me a coffin. Actually.
Really?
Yeah, they did. But I just used what I now always say to my kids when I tell them to finally unplug the PlayStation, and I say that's enough now, and they say, well, what are we going to do? And I always quote that wonderful line of SpongeBob. We're going to use our imagination. So I just used my imagination. And
It worked.
came up with I read the script. I have a line in the movie. I have crossed oceans of time to find you. And I wanted to do the movie for that line.
Really?
I wanted to say that line to someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And I thought, I've got to do this part because I want to say that line.
Did you have much say in the outfit you wore and the little glasses you wore? Because they were great.
Very little, really. It was all very much designed, and all of that was normally in you know, I'd always up to that point really designed a character from the neck up, and he wanted very specific things, and we butted heads once or twice along the way. Yeah.
One of the features of that. Sorry,
but it's just that's what makes it sort of interesting. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
always. You know, I was young, and I think. My mind was made up, and so was his.
Yeah. Well, that can produce creative sparks.
It does.
Yeah?
It does, and it did. Yeah.
I mean, one of the other features of that, of course, was the prosthetic makeup, and I wonder, and which obviously has featured in your career since. Do you find it a complete drag, or do you like the process of feeling that you're disappearing inside another face? How do you relate to this question of heavy, elaborate makeup?
Well, you always want, I suppose, the Hannibal was the one prosthetic makeup that really, where I disappeared, and I was as free as I've ever been on a set, even though I could only move a hand and an eye, and I was in a wheelchair. I was totally free because I had completely disappeared, and my goal was accomplished to just make Gary disappear. I mean, I've been trying to do that since the beginning of my career, really. The things I don't like about Gary. So finally, I could put him in a makeup, and he'd gone. Even the shape of my ears, I'd made him disappear. And it gave me a sense of such freedom. And it is, you lose inhibition when you're in a makeup like that, because it's rather like being at a Halloween thing. You know, you feel that you can get away with more or something, you know, because you're in a disguise. So you tend to lose your inhibitions a little when you're behind a mask. But you have to know what you're letting yourself in for, and when you go into a prosthetic part, you have to surrender to it. Actors, they say yes, and then they are going crazy.
And 3 hours, 4 hours in makeup,
5 hours,
and
6 hours. Hannibal was 6 hours from beginning to end, really. And they tied. I had no eyelids because the character had no eyelids, and so that was the puzzlement. How are we going to do this without CG was not a thing that was really used then. So they stuck a little piece underneath my eyelid, and they ran it sort of a very thin cord through a little plastic tube, and it came out underneath the makeup, and it anchored to a sort of third nipple that they stuck to my chest, and then they put a piece in my other eye, and they ran it up through and out the back of the wig.
Whoa.
And when we went for a take, they anchored those two, and then my eyes were open and I couldn't blink, and then someone was there, a guy giving me drops in the.
And you felt free after that?
Yeah, I did. I did. But
Freedom's
I did.
just another word for nothing left to lose.
No, it's. I mean, I can't believe the things I used to do. There's a trick that people use in the movies, and it's a little. It's rather like a Vic inhaler, but it has menthol crystals, and a makeup artist blows the menthol crystals into your eye, and you tear.
Right.
Well, for Sid Vicious, I was wearing contact lenses, dark brown contact lenses. But I also wanted the whites of the eye to look red and bloodshot from the drugs and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I would actually take the crystal and put it in my eye, and then it would scratch the whites of the eyes, and my eyes would then be bloodshot. And as long as it achieved the effect, I was.
You were okay with it?
I was completely okay with it. You know, but God knows what I was doing with this, putting these things in my eyes. But I had actually put the crystals in my eyes. I said, "Give me those." That'll, you know, and so anchoring my eyes down.
Wow.
As long as we got the result that we wanted, I was quite comfortable and quite sort of happy with that. I'm not a complainer. I'm not one of those people, really. There have been some good times and some bad times in the movie industry, you know, and I've made some stinkers. There's a few films that I would just go, you know, and I'm the first to say it.
That wasn't so good.
That wasn't so good. And you can't hit out of the park. It's just over a career. Very few can, I think. And there's always one or two. But you know, but it's never really felt like going into work. I feel very privileged and blessed to be able to do what I do. That's how I see it.
But it's an interesting thing that you said a few moments ago, that the fact that you love to disappear into the part, presumably, well, not presumably, but I mean, I imagine that you look at other actors and you say, well, no, that's not someone who's going to disappear into the part. They want the part to be a burnishment to who they are.
Yeah, but I like that too.
To work against, you mean?
Yeah, and I admire it. And when I see it, I do admire it enormously. I'm a big fan of Robert Redford. I love Robert Redford's acting. I like Paul Newman. I always thought that Paul Newman somehow came with it was a different head. It was like it was behind the eyes, although he didn't physically change himself.
Rolling Stone actually described you as Hollywood Psycho Deluxe. That's quite an achievement.
I have a new one now.
Ah, what is that?
Thomas Alfredson calls me the Swiss Army knife of acting. I like that. I like it. Hollywood Psycho Deluxe.
Pretty good, isn't it?
Well, it's deluxe.
I'd like to move on to another musician whom you played at the other end of the spectrum from Sid Vicious, Ludwig, in the movie The Immortal Beloved.
That was another one I didn't want to do.
Why not?
Because I didn't want to be the bio kid.
Yeah.
And it came in, and I just said, I can't play Beethoven. Come on, I played Joe Orton. I've played, you know, Sid and Oswald, and you know, I'm like the go-to guy for the bio, you know. And I said, look, get Tony Hopkins. I said, he looks like Beethoven. I said he'd be fantastic. Anyway, they went to Tony, and he didn't get on with Bernard. He said, "You're a shouter. I think you're a shouter. Can't do that. I'm out of here." So, and then they went to so-and-so, someone else, and then it came back, and I said no. And then it went out to someone else, and then it went out to someone else, and Bernard had this obsession with me that there's this little locket, picture like in a locket, about so big, of a young Beethoven, and he said, it's Gary, it looks like Gary. It's Gary. He was obsessed with this idea, and it came back. And I thought, well, it's come back so many times that I should have a crack at it. I'm okay. I'm all right. I think there's a few moments in it.
People would say better than that, but
yeah, but there's a few moments in it that are good.
But its genius is hard. I mean, actually creating believably somebody who is a genius, and I think you made him real.
You need again. You need the writing.
Yeah.
You need. It's got to be. It's the writer that has to understand it.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I had a conversation with Richard Attenborough many years ago. I met him for Chaplin. And I asked him that, funny enough, because I read the script, and I said, "Where's the genius?" And he said, "What do you mean, darling? What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, you know, he shot for 7 weeks of a girl sniffing a flower, you know." He did 157 takes of just, and then scrapped it, and then started again.
Wow.
That wasn't in there, was it?
No,
It wasn't in that film. The
obsession, the obsessiveness.
Obsessiveness with trying to get something absolutely perfect, you know. But it has to be in the writing. And I thought Bernard Rose's take on The Immortal Beloved and who it might have been, as a sort of whodunit, a kind of, I think he'd stolen a little bit of Citizen Kane, really. That was the sort of structure. And I think it worked.
It did, absolutely.
For the story.
The writing thing leads naturally to actually mention Nil by Mouth again, just in the sense that you wrote and directed that. That was, I think, the first film you'd written and directed. So in terms of writing and indeed directing, that other aspect of creating films, is that something that you always want to do when you get the chance, or only every now and then?
No, I think I wanted to. I think at the time, I saw a way out of acting for me.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw it as a way out.
Did it turn out that way?
Huh?
Did it turn out that way in the sense that it didn't give you what you were looking for?
No, and then of course you get but things happened in my life, and I just shortly after that I became a single dad, and I had to bring up these 2 kids, and I decided that that's what I was going to do, rather than be off and away.
Yeah,
I thought I'd bring the kids up instead, and so that was my project.
Yeah.
And it was the best project, actually. You hear one talks about the work and the light and the 20, 30 years of it, and my biggest achievement is those 2 boys.
Because you were able to spend the time.
Yeah, and how they've developed and how they've sort of have grown up, and have since, look what has come my way, and what I've played since. Sean's won 2 Oscars since he said he was going to retire. Yeah? You remember that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've retired, and so now I've got the chance to. They're older, and you have to give so much of yourself to directing, and as you know, as a writer, you're going to spend. An actor can, Tinker Tailor is 2 years for Thomas Alfredson. It's 10 weeks for me.
Yeah.
So you've got to love it. You've really got to love it, because you're going to spend a lot of time with the material. And so that commitment, I felt, would have been unfair on the boys.
Right.
To be, someone asked me the other day. They said, "What are you doing next?" And I said, "I'm technically out of work. I'm an out of work actor right now because there is nothing that I'm going to go to.
Right.
I don't know what's out there." But in a way, I'm grateful for it, because once something is there, even though you're not physically on the set yet, you're already working, and you are checking out a little. Yeah. You just do. I'm just sort of gazing at this. I'm preoccupied.
So your family becomes slightly shadowy.
It can a bit, it can. And right now I can be present and focused with them.
Before we get to that, just I mean, because there is so much to cover, but I don't want to forget the Contender, because that's it was such an interesting film. You were a producer, you had a producer hat on in that context, and also a controversial film because you weren't happy with the outcome. Is that a fair summary of how you felt about what resulted?
It was. We produced. It was my company, SE8, who had done Neil by Mouth.
Mm.
Found that piece and I thought it was a grown-ups movie. I thought it was an interesting take on it, and it wasn't that I was. It was a big controversy. I had said something and it got taken the wrong way.
The studio had edited it. This is quoting what people said you'd said, that they'd edited it so that the Democratic characters came off better than they should have done, and the Republicans did not. Is that a fair statement of what the controversy was, whether it was true?
I simply said that first of all, they put music under me that was like villain music, and it was a little obvious. But what happened was that I had said that Shelley Runyon believes that he is doing the right thing, and that he does not nominate her, because she's a woman. He believes that she is not the right person for the job.
Right.
They're two different things. He's not a misogynist. He's not a racist, And in all politics, he plays a little dirty. But we're all doing it. They're all at it right now. No one's clean. No one's clean on either side. Mm. And I said that because of that, I felt that he was a real patriot, because he believed for the country that she wasn't the nominee for him. Mm. And it just got all, and suddenly I'm right wing and all of that, and it all just got taken. It just got taken the wrong way, and now I don't, anything that's political, anything, I don't even go there. I don't go there anymore. I'm not running for Senate. Actors are actors, and we can have our opinions, and let's keep it amongst ourselves and our friends. You know what I mean? But I don't go anywhere near it now, because I got stung by that.
Not a lot of controversy, but a lot of joy with the Harry Potter movies. A lot of joy for audiences. Was Sirius Black a part that you enjoyed?
Yeah, I enjoyed the whole being a whole part of the whole thing. My fan base went from 40 to 4. I sent a little letter to someone, a friend of mine. His girls love Harry Potter, and I write little stories as Sirius Black. I write as Sirius and sign it Sirius Black, and I got a rubber, the wax with the stamp. With the thing, and it's red paper and it's black envelopes, and it's and because they love it. These fans love this, and I just actually received an email today from one of them saying thank you very much for our letter, and you see the joy that these kids have they take from it, So it was. So that in part, it was great growing up, watching Dan grow up, and Emma and Rupert, and watching them grow up, watching Alan Rickman get older. Gary, I think he designed that costume.
Really.
And we all came back and got we were all a little bit bigger around the middle. And but I mean, they're phenomenal kids. Mm. And it is a cinematic. It's a phenomenon. I mean, there's nothing like it. There was nothing before it. There's going to be nothing like it again. Mm. For 10 years. consistently keep the quality of it. David Heyman has got to be the luckiest producer in the world. I mean, he went back to the cast. He got the cast back every single time, you know. And who would have known? And also a nod to Chris Columbus, who began the world. He built the kitchen. All the other people came in and cooked, but he designed the recipe. Who, when he cast those kids, you know, who would have known that they would have had the chops really to carry those movies for 7 years, and 9 years, or whatever it's been.
It should be noted that Daniel Radcliffe has spoken, you know, very warmly about how you have helped him in his development as an actor, and just how much he looks up to you for what you've done for him during the course of the movies.
I would never be presumptuous enough to take an actor or a younger actor aside, but I think you can teach through sort of power of example. You can do your work, turn up, know the lines, be on time. Be on time. Don't waste people's time, you know. And I think that younger actors can see that, see the work ethic, and you know, I think you can teach that way, and just in a very silent way, just by doing that. I've always been a worker. You know, movies are a lot of money. They cost a lot of money to make, and it's you can't waste people's time. You've got to be ready to get to work and do it.
Perhaps it plays to that. One of the things that was said about the other franchise, you've hit the bullseye with the Batman with Christopher Nolan. That one of the critics remarked of your performance as James Gordon that it is so skilled it makes virtue look exciting, which is
Rolling Stone again.
What can I say?
But well, you remember those, don't you? I mean, if someone says you make virtue look exciting, you're going to remember it. It's sort of like, you know.
Which must be an interesting compliment for you, bearing in mind, you know, the number of magnificent villains you've done. I imagine it is harder to make virtue look exciting.
Well, I can't give the secret away. No, I think you are to some extent. You do get a bit typecast. I haven't played as many villains as people think, but they always say, you always play villains. If you actually went through the list, there's very few. But they remember that bloody Luc Besson movie.
Yes.
Leon.
Yeah.
They remember Leon and me taking pills and blowing things up. But you are at the mercy of the industry. So there are roles that you might like to play, but you're never even going to get in the door. The mind's made up. The director wants this guy, and that, you know, that I've lived in that. You swim in that sea. That sea of rejection is just you have to get a tough skin, because that's what you face from the very beginning. Doors closing on you. So you are at the mercy of the industry and the imagination of the people that are casting. And it takes a Chris Nolan to actually say, I think Gary could play a good guy. And why not? Why doesn't he play Jim Gordon? Who is in a way the best guy? He's just, everything is, it's a bit like our friend Smiley, you know, it's moral certainty. There's no self-aggrandizement. There's no ego. It's about doing the job.
Which leads neatly to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and the story, apocryphal or not, that you called the director a couple of days before and said, I can't do this. There's no there in this character.
You know what? This story's got a little. Can I?
Please. This is the opportunity to set the record straight.
These stories. You see how it can happen though. When they
yes,
say
exactly.
Oldman is Republican Oldman. No, I called. I knew of the. Obviously, I knew of the material. I had seen the series in '79. at a time when, you know, before TiVo, before VCRs, one would work their social calendar around the 1 hour a week for Tinker Tailor. It was the first thing that Guinness had ever done on television, and he was, to many, the definitive portrayal of Smiley. It was the face of Smiley. And I saw that, and then subsequently, you know, read some of the books, and that's how I sort of met Le Carré, really, back then. Tinker Tailor, great script, great source material, an incredible part. It's a no-brainer. And I dithered because I was paralyzed with fear for the first time, really.
Because of that antecedent of... Yeah.
Because they were such huge shoes to step into. And he was so famous and made the role so famous that comparisons are always inevitable. If you play a famous role in the theatre, you are always measured against all the great Hamlets, the great King Lears, obviously. But this was something else here. And the shadow of him loomed large. And I thought, people will say, who the bloody hell does he think he is, you know? Sir Alec Guinness, you know. And anyway, I mean, I said yes. And then a week before we started shooting, I called, we spoke to the producers, and I said, I don't think I'm your man. I don't know. I don't know if I'm the right guy.
That must have freaked them out.
Yeah, it freaked me out, actually. And the producer said to my manager, well, what do you normally do when this happens? And he says, it hasn't happened before. Anyway, I got through it, and I wrote the you know, it's good, a bit of fear. A bit of fear keeps you on your toes. And I got there on the first day, and I thought, I remember this. I'm okay now. You know, I know what I'm doing. But then after the job, someone gave me a book, a memoir of Guinness. And funny enough, he had called the director the night before and said, I can't do this, there's no there.
Oh my goodness.
It was Guinness who said, there's no there there. I don't know what I'm playing. I don't know who this guy is. You have to get someone else. These are not the droids you're looking for. So I'm awfully glad that the producer said, it's just a touch of, you know, we're not going to fucking recast him. It's a touch of stage fright. And that was their response to it. And I'm awfully glad that it was just an actor getting a bit wobbly for 5 minutes, you know.
Well, I think we're all very glad you stuck to it as well.
And it's, you know, they're talking that they may do now Smiley's people.
Great.
And that has been, I think, partly because the response to this movie has been absolutely phenomenal. We opened the movie in the UK last year, and there we were on a Thursday evening, standing there with a handful of wonderful reviewers, patting ourselves on the back. But of course, the one component that was missing was knowing that the next day the movie opened, and the component that was missing was the audience. The critics were unanimous. But was it going to make $1? Was it going to make $100? We had no idea. And the fact that a movie that is in this day and age audacious, the pacing, it's like a lava lamp. It's like snow falling when you watch it, you know, and it demands something of you as an audience. It does not undermine how intelligent you are, and often now we're in a situation where the movie audience is dumb, And the television audience is really smart, because now you have complicated plots. You watch Mad Men, you watch all of these things, and you know, and that's Peggy, and she went out with the lesbian girlfriend, and we thought we hold this in our heads week after week after week. Complex things, Broadwalk Empire, Sopranos. Television audience is smart, movie audience is stupid. And so, the industry sort of unchallenged wisdom is the third rail, adult drama. You can't touch it. Audiences don't want to see it. And I believe, we have not pandered to Bond or Bourne, as both wonderful as they both are. This is a different type of movie, harks back to the 70s. It's intelligent. It's an emotional story. It's about people. It's about characters. And in cineplexes, where audiences have a choice to either go and see The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or Warhorse, per cinema, we are outgrossing those movies. And I think I would love to see this. I would hope that it's set a bit of a benchmark, and that there's a shift, and that things might change, because we go to movies and you are assaulted by imagery and sound, and I come away going, I need a Tylenol. And for a movie like this, which uses silence, and I just think it's not just because I'm involved with it, I think Thomas has done such a beautiful job, and he's made such a great movie, and it's a travesty today that he is not nominated at the Directors Guild of America. I think it's a fucking travesty that this movie. There's a story here. There's a very, very interesting story here that someone should write about. And this is not sour grapes, but this is, I would argue, next to The Artist, that this is the best reviewed movie of the year. It is. My mother couldn't write these reviews. I mean,
yeah,
right?
and plus audiences,
and the audiences are seeing it, and it has been totally ignored by those various people that give awards. And interestingly enough, for the first time, the Globe nominations haven't helped movies. We're still outgrossing them. So I'm proud to be a part of it, and I'm happy to go and it's always a money question. And now that puzzle is solved, I guess. We will do Smiley's People, and I would be very honoured to be associated with Mr. Smiley.
Once again. Yeah.
But it fills my heart that a movie like this, that people enjoy it, and they're going back again to see it, but that it's making money. I don't mean that in a cynical way, but people are seeing this movie.
Absolutely.
And I love that.
Wonderful. Well, that is in some ways a good note to end on, and you've been very kind in the sense that we've got longer than we planned in our discussions. But are you up for taking a couple of questions from the audience? So fire away. Yes, what's your question?
Thank you so much. So many of your films mean a lot to me, and my daughter's here with me. And I love No Bun Mouth, although that was a terrifying film. I just want to mention one film, though, that makes me laugh when I think of it. I think it's called Track 29, directed by Nicholas Roeg.
Nick Roeg, yeah.
And the reason I remember is it had one of those great lines in it, maybe not as great as the vampire one, but it was something like, I want my American childhood and I want it now. And did you have any memories of that?
Track 29, directed by Nicholas Roeg.
It is a very bizarre, flawed film. And I remember the meeting with Nick Roeg, and I said, this is either... I got the job. He told me later that he cast me because of this. I met him at his house in London. As Nick, and sort of, hello, Gary, sort of this old sort of chat like that. And I said, this is either brilliant or the biggest load of bollocks I've ever read. And he loved that, and he cast me. And I would always then say, Nick, the dialogue here, and he would say, dialogue, this isn't bloody dialogue, this is the utterings. He would call it the utterings.
It's a warning sign right there.
He had sort of a disrespect for it too. But it was a very bizarre movie. And I used to do an impersonation of, that line wasn't in the script. I want my, and it was a thing I used to do. It was like a petulant kid, and I would do an impersonation of a sort of a petulant child, and I would always go, I want my dinner, and I want it now. And that I did that one day on the set, and he sometimes things happen. But you're on a set. I had a line in Leon, or The Professional, where I turn around and say, "Bring me everyone." And then the guy says, "Everyone?" And I go, it was a joke to make Luke laugh. I just did it in a take.
Right.
I was just messing around. And I said, that'll make him laugh, And he went, I love it, it's in the movie.
Very good.
You may have been asked this a million times, but if you were to be giving the ultimate advice to a young actor or filmmaker who was doing that and was giving it their all and not in the pub or anything, what would your advice
just
to
keep
them?
doing it. I'm not the greatest actor in the world. I mean, I don't kid myself that I am. I'm better in some parts than I am in others. It's a crapshoot as to whether something is going to turn out okay. I've been good in films that are not so good sometimes, but it is a career you can engineer to a point. And then you're just really at the mercy of the showbiz gods. I mean, it's luck. It's being around at the right time, and they were looking for a George Smiley and couldn't find one, and they were going through the list. And Thomas said, no, not him, not him, not him. And sometimes I've been on the list of people where they've said, no, not Gary Oldman. There are directors who don't like my work, who I've never worked with. There's a studio, several, who I've never done a film for them. I don't know whether it's an anti-Gary Oldman policy they have, or I don't know. But there's luck, there's being around at the right time, and that woman who said to Thomas Alfredson, "What about Gary?" And he went, and a light went off, and he went, "Yeah. Gary could do George," and so it's weird. It's a weird thing, and it involves all of those, getting a break and how you sort of get a lucky break and
then I imagine figuring out how to deal with it.
I feel for young actors because there's there certainly was more. When I was first starting out, I could cut my teeth. I was in before I went into London, before I worked at the Colt, before I was at the RSC. I was cutting my teeth in rep. I could make mistakes. If you're a young actor now and you're on a TV series or you're in a movie, what's that kid in, Incredibly Loud, Extremely Clear? Is that the title of it? Have I got that round the right way? But you've got one. He's probably got at least for the foreseeable future. He has a career ahead of him, But he could have blown that. You come, you go, And I think the work ethic, is you could actually learn from Daniel Radcliffe, because he has gone out there. I don't know many 17-year-olds that would have done Equus. For a start, that's risky. And then, of course, he's now popped up in a musical, and he has been out there learning to sing, learning to dance, all the things that he didn't do at a drama school because he never had a formal training. I did. I went and, we did all that stuff, mime and fencing and stage fighting and all of those things, Shakespeare workshops. He hasn't had that. But he knows that when he leaves Potter, he is going up. He's going up with people that have that have had that training. And he is not resting on his laurels. He doesn't think the world owes me a job because I was Harry Potter. And I think that is an incredible attitude to take. So that he, you could learn from young Mr. Radcliffe.
Well, I think as many actors from Brad Pitt to Ryan Gosling to Daniel Radcliffe say they've learnt a tremendous amount from you. And
it's a chain that comes through, and we're all part links in a chain, and we pass through. And as you say, there are those actors now. I look at Fassbender, and I look at Ryan Gosling, and I look at Matt Damon, and I look at all of these younger actors coming up through, and there's some good ones coming up.
And I think it'd be fair to say you've helped to pass on the flame.
If I push the boat out a little for them, I like to think I've helped in some small way.
Gary Oldman, thank you very much indeed.